Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to class today. Thank you for joining me, whether you're watching live or you're watching the recording. I appreciate you watching. So today, as we are, getting close to wrapping up, we're getting into the advanced React topics module here. And I'm just kind of using this particular module as sort of a catch-all for some things that I want you all to know or want you all to be able to do. But they don't really fit many other places, or they're a little more outside of the basics of using or coding with React. And so by the time you're done with this module, you should have all the tools and the ability to, if you take this course and combine it with the knowledge that you've gained over the last 2 years, to actually create and have online a fully featured web application, which, in my opinion, is a big deal, right? Like, it's all led up to this and the ability to do this. So, things are looking pretty good. I kind of wanted to ease into the holiday weekend here with a lighter topic, and one of the topics that I have in the module are component libraries, specifically Material UI, the Material UI component library. And so that's what I'd like to talk about today. You could think about component libraries in the same way that you would think about, say, Bootstrap, when we covered Bootstrap back in Web 140, right? Not exactly the same as Bootstrap, since Bootstrap primarily just focused on the CSS of it all. It had a little bit of JavaScript-based components that you could access, but by and large, it was primarily for the CSS. With component libraries like Material UI, what we're seeing are some pre-built, fully loaded, if you will, components that are ready to go. Right? And I'm on the Material UI website here. It's mui.com. And we'll use this in a little basic project here in just a few moments. We'll just kind of get our feet wet and play with some of the components and try to figure them out together. But there are many other component libraries that are similar, right? Like, you can just look at any really article. There's tons of articles out there that tell you about all sorts of different ones. Chakra UI, that's one that I've looked at and used before. It's a pretty good one. There's even something called React Bootstrap, which gives you some of the Bootstrap component libraries just in React. So if you want to use some of the Bootstrap stuff that we talked about in React, that's something that's available as well. Next UI, Theme UI, Prime React, Blueprint, Retool, just all sorts of stuff that's available. And as you are developing your final project application, you might find that you want to use one of these, whether it's Material UI or some other application, in order to take care of some of the components, so you're not worrying as much about specific components and you're worried more about making everything work and be functional here, which would be ideal. So as we're looking at this here, one of the things that we see right off the bat, we've got the command to install it right here on the home page. I'm going to go ahead and copy that, have it on my clipboard. Some other things that we might want to look at here is the documentation. I'm going to go ahead and click over into the documentation. For the purposes of this demonstration, I'm going to use the Material Material UI core here. If we look here, there is a button that says pricing. So you might think, oh, well, it costs money. But if we look at the pricing here, we see that for the basic components, it's absolutely free. The only thing that you're getting if you're paying $15 a month or even more per month are a couple of extra components and support, technical support. So if you are in a organization that uses this for a production application in the future, it might be worth it to have, a pro or premium account to get support. You'd get that probably through your organization, however. But if we look here, we get the Material UI core, the Joy UI core, the MUI base, the MUI system. The majority of these other components that are in MUIX, which is the advanced library, you can see we're missing like column resizing, column reordering, column pinning. These are things that are in the pro here, right? But for the vast majority of applications, you're not going to need those. And again, this is just a pre-created component library, right? So you could still code these things up yourselves. So you could start with some of the things that aren't included and then add some more code to make, for example, column resizing possible. That's just something to consider. When we look at our documentation here, we can see it gives us information on Material UI itself. We said we can use it like Bootstrap. It has the same benefits as Bootstrap, so we can move a little bit faster. We can get things production ready quicker. It already has a particular look to it, so we don't have to worry about, styling it. Somebody's already put a lot of time and effort into designing these different components. So if we don't have a lot of time to do styling, then it's done for us. It's customizable. It's used by a ton of different people. If we look at the homepage again, we can scroll down a little bit and see who all uses Material UI. You see Spotify there, Amazon, NASA, Netflix, Unity, Shutterstock. These are, huge named organizations here that are using this component library as part of their product. And we could just do different things with it. So I recommend going through and reading through the overview, going through and reading through the usage. The installation here is fairly simple. We'll do the installation with our example. It does say that we might want to install a font, so we will install the Roboto font with our project. Remember, I got the regular install off of the homepage. Gives us some example projects here. I recommend, looking through that so you can see different things that were made utilizing these assets. There's a learn section that'll help you learn how to use this object, or use this component library rather. Resources for Figma if you want to include it. Include things that look the same way inside your wireframes. But the big thing that we're going to be worried about for our purposes today are going to be the components. So let's get going here with actually working with some of these components and trying to figure some stuff out. There's a whole lot of stuff in here in the component that we can use. So for our purposes today, as per usual, just a little bit of a proof of concept, right? One of the things that I want to do next time is to go through and make a more fully fledged application. So we'll actually use some of these things in context. But for today, I just want to kind of go through and just look at a few of these things and how we would implement them and talk about it. So let's create ourselves a React application so we can do that. Going to open up a new terminal here. We'll go to the E drive. We'll cd into web 285 as we usually do. And we will npx create -react -app. We'll call this MUI -example. And we'll give it a minute or two for npm to install our React application. The next thing we'll do is we will install the other things that we need to install for today's purposes. That's just going to be the Material UI component library, and we'll go ahead and install that font that it suggested installing, which is the Roboto font, which is a good font. It's a font that I like to use in projects, so it's a good font. Let's go ahead and have that command pulled up to install that font, just so we know what we're doing here. And that was installation. And there's my font source. It'll be ready in just a couple moments here. And we're ready. All right. So that is a good thing. Let's go ahead and we will cd into MUI dash, what did we call it? Example. It would help if I spelled it correctly, MUI dash example. And we'll go ahead and open that up in our project. So let's code period -r. Open our terminal up here. While we're working with this here, let's go ahead and create our .env file to disable linting, because that's something that I still haven't figured out why it's not working correctly on my machine. So disable ESLint plugin equals true. So now you always want to make sure that you're installing additional packages and component libraries and things of that nature in the root of your project folder. So I am in the root of my project folder here. I had that command to install the material component library on my clipboard, so let's run that. That won't take nearly as long to install as, a base React install, but it will take a couple seconds just because it's still, it's bringing a lot of files in here. And we'll go ahead and install the font. So we'll say npm install, or npm I, either one will work, at font source / Roboto. And we'll get Roboto in here. And that should just take a second. And again, it would help if I spelled it correctly. It is a... You can tell I'm recording this on a day before a holiday weekend because my brain. Anyway, okay, so that gets us to where we want to go. We've got the material UI library installed. We have the font that the material UI library suggests that we use installed into our project. And so now we can npm start and run our site. And as it stands right now, right, we're not going to see anything different on our standard React site that we get. Because we haven't made any changes. We haven't done anything to it yet. So I guess it's time to start making some changes. So we'll go into source app.js. And you know what? Let's just get rid of all of this. We will... yeah, let's just get rid of all this. We'll just go ahead and we'll add our function app back with the return. Throw a little div in there. And we'll need some import statements here, of course. So let's go ahead and import everything from React. So import star from React. Is that right? There's a little idiosyncrasy about this command that I don't quite remember. Is it no quotes when I do it this way? Oh, I think I have to alias it. That's what. Import star as R from React. There we go. So now I've imported everything from React. To use the Material UI library, I am going to import a component at a time. Let's go ahead and import our font. So we will import, and in this case, we're just going to import at font source / Roboto. And I want to use the 500.css font. Now let's just throw a hello world on here just to see what we end up with. There's our hello world. If we do a bit of an inspect here, we can see our font family here is, well, there's Roboto right in there. Right, it's got all the backup fonts and everything because that's the way this works. But we have a site now that we're ready to add some Material UI components to it. So let's have a look here at our Material UI components, and let's pick one that we want to add. And just examine how to do it. Right, so I can expand my components here. We can see there's an autocomplete. There's a button group, checkbox, radio button, some data display types here, a table, a tooltip, some typography. Right, which goes into, you getting the Roboto font in there. Let's add oh, it's tough to pick something. Yeah, let's add an accordion. Why not? So let's look at the accordion here. So you've seen accordions on websites. Accordions can be relatively challenging to make. I think we've done them in the past using just regular old JavaScript. We can see some accordion information here. We can see a little bit of animation that's applied to this accordion as well. Right, that when we drop down, it has a little easing on entry. It also flips around, animates around the little caret there to change the affordance of going down to going up. Right, we can see we have a basic accordion, we have a controlled accordion, which adds a little bit of different information in it. And we get some information on how to do some customization here. But we can see if we click on, say, show the source for something like this controlled accordion, you can see we have the controlled accordion example, and we can click on show the source here, or edit in Code Sandbox, edit in SandBlitz, copy the source even. We can see what all is being done here, and you can see that we have some extra stuff going on, right, with typography and things of that nature. And we can see all the stuff that we have to, and maybe an accordion's not a good one to do as a first one, so let's change this up. Let's just start with a good old button. Why not? A good old button. Accordion's a little bit of a complex one to be our first component that we're using. So let's just start off with a button. But we can go through here and we can see, okay, we got a button here that we use. There are different variants of a button. You can see that there's a text-only button that when we hover over it, we get a little ghost hover there. A contained button and an outlined button. So the fact that we have these three button types within a singular application is a good thing. Right, because typically we'd see something like this where we'd have the different types of buttons in a UI to be suggestions from user experience designer, right? Like, what's the primary action? What's the secondary action? We can see what they look like disabled. And we can see, we handle an on-click with these buttons in the exact same way that we would handle an on-click in anything else. We also see some opportunities to add some color here. So again, it's very similar to the way that we would do it in Bootstrap, right? We could add some different predefined colors in Bootstrap, do various things. We can also see that there's something called an icon button that we can work with. In this example, it's allowing me to look at my pictures. Buttons with icons on the label. We can see there's an end icon option there where we can bring an icon in. Icon buttons. Just absolutely all types of stuff here. So let's add a button to our application. So I need to import my button, right? Because I have to. So we're going to import curly braces uppercase B button from @MUI/material. And I think I actually might want to do @MUI/material/star, but I think @MUI/material is all I need. So we'll go ahead and save that. And so we're going to use this and add and import the different items as we go into it. But now we have a button material imported from MUI materials UI that we can use. Now notice that button here is uppercase B. If we wanted to use lowercase b button, we could still do that. And have a button HTML component in our site. But notice that if we just put the regular old button HTML component on our site, it just gives us the standard button. Right, so let's add a MUI button to our site. That works like that. Now we do need to put text on the button, right? So we actually see it. So if we refer to our documentation here, it shows us what we need to do. So it is uppercase B button, opening tag, uppercase B button, closing tag. Now if I save that, we can see the code here looks, next to not different at all, right? If we were to just look at that code, but if we look at the output here, we see something pretty different, right? Like the only difference between these two buttons in terms of how we coded them in was an uppercase B versus a lowercase b. You see here, regular button for lowercase b button, text button as the default button for our material UI button. You can also see that that font is all caps and all the work, all the heavy lifting that material UI is doing on the back end. So let's make this a button variant. Let's make this a contained button variant. So I'm going to add the variant attribute with contained. Variant equals contained. And now we have a contained button, right? You can see there is a slight drop shadow underneath the button. Changes colors when I hover over it. Lots of stuff we can do here for this particular button item, right? Doing pretty good. So let's bring another component into this, I think, and then we'll do some more stuff with this. Let's bring a container into this, right? So you'll, because that's something that we can relate to, relate back to Bootstrap as well, because you'll remember that Bootstrap had the container, and the container worked on the grid system, and we could do different things with it. So let's bring a container into this. Let's wrap it around our button component here. So we have a button that is inside of our container. And you can see that our container has a max width prop or a fixed attribute. And so if we use the max width prop, there are a few different sizes that we could use for that. If we go to edit this in Code Sandbox, we could see this in action. So if I have my container here, I can have I believe it's small, medium, and large. We also see in particular this has a box component that's been added to it as well that we can play with. But I want to start off by adding our container. So the first thing that we're going to do here is we're going to add it to our import statement. Right? Remember I said I'm importing a component at a time here. So I'm going to import button, comma, container. And we're just going to put a container, uppercase C container. Here, we'll give it the max width value, set it equal to small. And we'll close our container around our button. Save that. And now it's tough to see here. We can only really tell by the way it stands because our button moved. But this is a fluid width container, a responsive container. So if we change the size of our viewport here, you can see the button moves accordingly, but stays contained on the page, right? There is a min width there. Right? We can even use CSS on what we have here. So what I would suggest doing would be to use classes. So I would put button class name equals center, something like that here. So then when we go into, and we'd actually have to import app.css, or what is the CSS import? Yeah. So I probably just want to dot slash that, like so. And then in my app.css, I can just do a little bit of CSS work here. Like we could take that dot center button, margin 0 auto, and maybe I want HTML body, background color. Go for a nice dark blue, right? So maybe something like 220055. For our container, we might want to make that white. So let's add a class to our container. Class name equals, let's say, container. So then in our app.css, we can add a dot container background color white. Maybe I might want to make this important there for our centering. We might have to do some troubleshooting with that. I don't quite remember because they are treated a little bit differently. So let's look at this component here. Inspect element. And so this is something that you'd want to do, like if you don't necessarily understand how these components work or the CSS that's being applied to them. And so we can see here, it looks like it's bringing it in as a flex item. So what we might want to do is say flex or align items center. Then if margin 0 autos or justify items center. I can never remember which one that is. Let's look it up really quickly. Center. Let's see. Maybe it's justify content. Okay. Could be just that the container doesn't have the flex set on it. This is, this is a little strange. It's something you'd have to troubleshoot probably. Because it looks like the button is flex based on how it's displayed as inline. So we'd probably have to do align self, maybe, for the button. That should be done on the parent. Let's just add a couple of these to the parent. which is going to be the container. We'll add a display flex, align items, center, justify content, center. There we go. That got it to work. Okay. DevTools having a time. Let's do a min height on this as well. Pull out a min height of 100 viewport height. Why not? And so now we just have a button in the center of a div that looks like this. Right, pretty cool. Not kind of a div, but whatever. Right, so we've got this component here. Button's a little small. Now that we've got that component added in, so we can look at our button component again. Button, 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 button. And we can remember there was a size attribute here that we could work with. Just have to find it. Sizes. See, size small, size medium, size large. So let's make this a size large button. Drag these over to the side here. So on our button here, we will add a size equals large. And now we have a large button. Hard to tell the difference, like the button isn't much bigger between a small button and a large button, but it is a little bit bigger. So let's add an on-click here, just so we can see how we would do that. We do that basically exactly the same as we would with a regular button, right? We're going to add our on-click equals, and then for React, we're going to start it off with curly braces. This is going to be a function. So we'll put in our arrow notation function. And we'll just put an alert in here. Alert. Hello. World. So we could have linked that to another, had that be another function that we run off, or we just put the inline function here like we did. Now if I click hello world, we get the alert there. So even though it is different than the other button, it still operates the exact same way, which is pretty cool. So that's 2 components from our UI library that we used here. Let's see if we can get one more in before we go for today. What's a good one to do? We can see some of the APIs that are used here as well. These are things to look at, like the backdrop API here. Just some interesting stuff. Let's figure out a component that we want to put in here, though. This autocomplete is a pretty cool one, right? Because you can see it serves as both a drop down and a search. So if I started to search city, right, it's going to pull from the list. This is a really cool one. So this would be something that's pretty neat if you were You know, maybe using some kind of API to pull these titles in, right? You know, create some kind of list of titles from an API and have it auto-populate something like this, and then you could automatically search it. Would be an interesting option. Image avatars here, where you can just put the source of the avatar. It's pretty cool. Or they can contain letters. This is useful if you're doing something like a login. So let's use one of these letter avatars here and see what we can do with that. Would be pretty cool. Because like if you'll notice, like when you get like emails, for example, they might have one of these letter type avatars on them. So that would be a cool thing that we could implement here and have, you know, maybe the initials come in from another source and have that done. So I think that is a good, you know, pretty easy third component that we can add here. So let's add an avatar component here to our import. And then up above the button here, I will add an avatar. Now there are different colors and different things that we can use here. Let's see if I can find the color library really quickly here. Where is that color library? It's in here somewhere. Customization, color. So there are colors that can be picked, and there are different colors that are in different palettes. So the one that's gonna be most advantageous to us are these color palettes here. Because you get a hue and a shade. And these are the two things that you'll want to know for including colors using these predefined color palettes. So let's use this Indigo 900 here for our avatar. So we're gonna use SX here, and SX is a prop that's in the material UI. We're going to set that equal to curly brace, BG color colon. Let's see if is that quotes or no quotes. No quote. BG color colon indigo 900. And so that's going to give us that dark color. We'll add some initials in there, close that. Giving me a bit of an issue here. Oh, you know what? I bet I have to import that palette. I forgot to import my palette. So I think what I want to do here is I actually want to import Indigo as well. Or this actually might be a case where I would need another, or maybe I could do import colors. Let's just do it as another import statement. So I'm going to import Indigo from at MUI slash material slash colors slash indigo. Is that not in the colors library? Let's check. So we can go into at MUI. Remember, this stuff's always here. So MUI, material, colors, indigo. Here it is. Did I misspell it? Let's do this. Do with that. There we go. That'll take care of it. Now we can see our little avatar in there. A little bit of custom CSS work would allow us to work with that. I believe we can also change the color of our button the same way. Let's try to SX equals BG color indigo. Let's do indigo 500 for this one. Right, so we can have both of our buttons in this. So we can have all of our elements in the same color family. We can add a class to this avatar. Class name equals av. And then in app.css, we could add a .av. And this is something where we'd probably want to, play with the placement a little bit, right? If we do a little inspect element here and play with the element just a little bit, what if we made this position relative? Or actually, we would want to add a display block to this. Display block, or display inline block, or display something here. Right, it is a little funky because we have it with flex here. Let's see, what would we have to change here in the container? I think it's justify. Is it justify content that we would have to get rid of? And then we do justify self on comment this out. It must be a line. Yeah, let's get rid of the align, and then on the center here, we will do align self. That might. Get rid of this margin. And let's Maybe justify self to this CSS here isn't wanting to cooperate. We'll get it figured out here. This is the code. Maybe I need the align item. On the parent. My apologies, I don't use flex as much. We'll say align items, flex, start, and then align self. Let's change this up so our something. I could always change it to grid. Why don't we do that? I actually use grid more. So grid. Grid. Template. Rows. 1 FR. 10 FR. Min height 100 BH. Align item. Center. Justify item center. Anyway, it's CSS that's bothering us, not MUI, so we can just have a quick look at it here. I'm sure if I sat here and played with it forever, then I'd figure it out. But it's fine, we'll leave it. See, my button works. You can see my avatar icon here with the initials pulled into it. And that's all that I have for you for today. So we'll go ahead and stop here. If you have any questions, please let me know. We'll get this all uploaded off camera and we'll get it sent out your way. With that being said, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.